In this video I want to talk a little bit about how can we create our low poly models and how can we bake out rounded shader to make them look a lot higher resolution. How can we not worry about the shading when we boolean out our objects, and also how can we automate many of the redundancies that we do when we create a game ready models props. So first of all, what I have here is just two simple shapes. Let's put down the booleans, because inevitably booleans are probably way to create the best way to create our low poly props. So you can see already we have one simple thing wrong. You can see that our shading is all messed up. So to fix that, actually what we have to do is put down, you can see that both of these shapes do not have a normal. So what we want to do is actually, before we boolean out anything, we want to put down a normal nodes for both of these. So you can see now with the shading, let's make this looks good, and for sphere, this, you see, now once you have boolean out, all of the weird shading is gone. Like that. That's trick number one. Basically, you always want to have normals before you boolean, because then it's gonna keep its normals and boolean out very nicely, and then we can just increase it, and it doesn't really care for how many there is polygons in here. It doesn't have to match together perfectly because we're still going to triangulate it. So obviously for models you may not want to super high resolution. You can just go back and change it like that. Now let's boolean out more shapes. So let's boolean out something in a, actually I have opened up that model, so let's actually delete this one. So like that. So let's create a couple more shapes that we want to boolean out. So what I'm gonna do is copy this tube and then select these, merge them together, and then let's give its normal together. So in this, let's just move it around like that. Let's extend it. Let's just do something that would be, let's merge it like that. So now we have these kind of two shapes. Let's actually increase its resolution like that. So let's just keep with the one boolean that's going to be subtract. Later on, I'm going to show how can we easily create with the union and also with the shatter. For demonstration purposes, let's say this is the shape that you want, but we also want to make it a little bit higher resolution, make it look higher resolution. So we have to bake out this kind of a rounded edge on the where we boolean it out. Well, first thing we have to know that our UVs has to be cut right here, where whenever we want to our rounded edge to be, our UVs has to be cut there. So in these places you want our cuts. So first of all, go to the boolean and enable AB seams. AB seams is going to basically create an edge group that's going to be automatically select the edges that we want to actually round down with our rounded edge shader, like that. But of course, only with these edges we can't really unwrap this model. So we have to add these edges to the actual edges. So first of all, before we actually do unwrapping, let's put down divide node. In divide node, all I really want to do is make sure I have maximum edges at 3. So this is basically going to triangulate our mesh, all of our mesh into triangles, and also avoid small angles. You can see it kind of creates a little bit more better n-gant triangles. I mean, you see at the edges it's kind of slanted in one side, but this is kind of spread them out. But if you don't really have to use it. So that's it. You can see our seams are still working like that. Now let's put down the autoseam. In UV autoseam, there are a couple things we want to do. First of all, let's enforce cuts, and cuts that we want to enforce is our AB seams from booleans like that. So this is basically going to make sure that we always have these seams selected, always going to be cut also. And now let's first of all go to the make sure you have visible groups in here, display groups, not to list, and make sure you have these color groups and viewport. Now we can actually individually interactively see where our cuts will be when we unwrap it. So this may be a little too little cuts, so to use mesh, not the mesh ruler, but gain tolerance, make it smaller like that. So this is where our seams are going to be. So this looks actually fine. You can see our seams are always going to be in here. because we have enforced groups. You can see it's not copied and deleted. Without deletion, you can see all of these seams are actually now gone, and these seams are only the ones that violets are. So make sure you include these seams. Now we're ready for the unwrapping, and for unwrap, UV flatten. So connect it. So for UV flatten, you can see we're gonna basically output for our UV seams group, and then UV flatten in seams. Just select seams like that, and disable manual layout, so we don't have to manually every time press on repack. Just disable manual layout like that. You can see we are now unwrapped it, made our cuts where we want them to. We're basically now ready to bake out our rounded edge shader. And now let's actually create our rounded edge look. So first of all, put down a quick game dev material, connect it, and then there's make sure you have render flag on it. And display, let's make a little maybe more gray. And there's option for rounded edge. Let's create it maybe from like that. Let's take a look how it looks. So in here, just click on render region and drag it out in a viewport. And I'll just wait to see the render, to see kind of a quick overview of our render. So this, let's put down roughness below, like that. So this looks pretty nice actually. I like that. I like this look. It's not very too much. Yes, this is good enough for rounding, for our roundiness, like that. So this looks fine. So this is value that I'm happy with. I just close it down. Let's go back to the view. So this is happy. So for roughness, I'm gonna put down back maybe default 0.5. So we have ready for our, this is our high resolution, and this is going to be UV flatten node, going to be our low. So put down a lab simple baker. So this is the mantra one. So in high, put in source geometry high, and then in low, like that, and take a look at it. So I have a couple of, this has rendered out the previous one. So first of all, resolution, let's make it 1K resolution. And this is basically it. Let's take a look at our UVs. So even looks fine. Let's just put a normal map and render it out. Now that it has baked out, it's maybe 30 seconds. Let's take a look at it. So what I did is actually created two versions of it, this baking. So this is the where we have separated our original, separated every part that we want to actually be rounded edge, and the other one is just auto UV. So you can see we're getting very nice edges. Whenever we want our rounded edge, we don't have to see any artifacting like that. And this is our example second. Basically, after I created the geometry, put down an auto UV, you can see we have many connected pieces that are not actually that are not disconnected where we want actually our rounded edge shader. And if you take a look at this result, you can see we're getting these kind of black borders. So I can easily see where we actually want, we have connected geometry. So I'm going to start selecting it here, this. So inside here, and you take a look at the UVs, fair enough. You can see it's basically wherever we have connected geometry with it, it's basically where we get this artifacting around it. So that's why it's important for us to bake out with these edges separated in the UV islands. For us to automate some of this process, what I have done is actually created some of the HDAs for very common tasks that we do for this kind of modeling, for low poly modeling. So first of all, autoseam and UV flattened. For me, I have created digital asset. For me, it's basically I provided a boolean UV boolean seam, and before that, after I have divided, I connect inside here, and it's automatically set up for me to include the AB seams, because I know in boolean I have AB seams and UV flatten. And basically, I have the same options from these two nodes inside here. I can switch between the nodes, and without cluttering up my network with two nodes, I can basically get all of the options that I need from one HDA. So how I did it is actually very simple. I'm gonna actually go to type properties, allow the annotating of contents for HDA, and I'm gonna put down a random node, so let's say box. And what you actually can do in HDA, which I haven't really seen anyone doing in videos, you can basically drop in all of the contents of any of the nodes that you have in your digital asset inside in folder or in this root. So you see now it's done. Apply. You can see in GO1, you can see I have all of the options for our box on top of the HDA like that. So basically whatever nodes you want, just drop inside the HDA. So you have all of the options on top of the HDA. You don't have to go inside network and select between them. So now you have to delete them, apply, and let's actually delete from here. Say node type like that. So that's cool trick that we can do. So this is for the auto seam, and another one I have for the clean. So for me, divide the clean HDA, which is basically these two nodes, also dragged on top of the HDA for both of these options. If I have a, let's say, a voxelized mesh, I can go select, create maybe even a preset for my options, automatically select them whenever I need to select off some of the specific options, but this is just a simple way we can automate our process. And of course, if you want, we can also include these two inside one HDA and all of that thing, because it's very flexible however you want to work. And so for HDAs, let's just leave it at that, and let's continue on. Now let's take a look at this model. What I did is basically did some booleans, basically the same model, but we have some subtractions, so this is subtract, this is intersect, we have some unions, and subtract again, so also shatter. So you can see this is our model. You can see as long as we have every one of these has a normal node, you see we're getting very nice smooth edges like that. But one thing it's kind of annoying is every time we want to create our model, we have to put down our normal node. So actually for the primitives, what you can actually do is create an HDAs for them. So let's say what I did is basically for the tube, I created digital asset, which is just a tube, normal, and output node. And now when I write in tube, I have tube normal as a HDA, and we have basically the same selection, only now it's going to create also normal node. And up here I can say if I want I can change the normal, but default values are usually good enough, and you don't have to manually put down another normal node. So what you can do is actually do that with every one of the primitives or with very common shapes that you want to boolean out, and kind of save you time with this putting down normal in every boolean. And also if you boolean out many shapes, what you can do is just put down after the merge node normal, so you do not have to put down normal after every primitive you put down and boolean out. So that's my tip for the faster putting down the primitives and start to creating shapes and boolean them out. So now let's take a look at this. So let's say this is our end shape and we are pretty happy with it. Well, first of all, you know that we have these kind of shapes in here, and we will be wasting our UV space for these shapes that are basically the same shape to be at a different UV location. So what we can do is actually delete these and just leave one of them. So just like this and delete them. And what you can do is bake out this, and then we can just take this and duplicate it around, so we not waste our UV space. So what I did is just blast it like that. Now we're happy with it, and now we can actually start baking out our rounded edge shader. But for that, what we have to do is make sure we do not intersect. So you can see we have this basically three different objects. We want to explode them, but for that we want to mark our UV seams. So for that, what I want to do is, what I like to do for this kind of hard edge object, put down a group node like that. And what I have is set up actually the selection by the angle. So for me, it's basically go inside your group node, deselect basically base group, deselect the base group, and select the minimal edge angle. You can see if you start to select it smaller, it starts to select all the hard edges. As you see, this is maybe too much, so I'm going to increase it. So for the most part, it's going to be 90% there, and we just have to fix it up with a couple of these, some of these edge selections, like that. So all you really have to do now is select these edges. So what you can do is turn on base group and start selecting. So this edge, like that, is going to basically add to the this group to this group, like that. Now that we have our cuts that we know that we definitely want our UV cuts to be, now let's put down autoseam. Let's include this group too. So let's rename it, maybe let's call it UV seams. Actually, like that. Now let's in auto seams include edges, UV seams, like that. And it's kind of hard to visualize like that. So what I like to do is actually go to this and UV flatten node. And since UV seam automatically going to output our seams, all we have to do is in UV flatten seams, group seams, like that. What I like to do is go inside our UV layout viewport and disable manual layout, like that. And now all you have to do is go back to UV seams and start playing around with this gain tolerance and merge threshold. So you see this is maybe too much, so maybe something like this. And you can see it's merge threshold going to create bigger islands and smaller ones, like that. So for me, I'm gonna leave it something like this, like that. So I don't really like this one place, so let's just maybe, usually 0.5 and 0.5 is good place to start at. You see gain tolerance start to increase it, start going to fuse it together, like that. So this is pretty good. I'm gonna leave it at that. And for us to maximize our UV space, remember to UV layout node, like that. So this is going to basically pack our UVs to maximize size, and so for the normal baking, make sure you show island packing padding, maybe something like the 3, so it's not too, you don't get any bleeding out. And see it starts to in here, and let's also apply between the target boundaries, like that. So now we have enough space for our normal baking, like that. So basically this is our UVs. Also, let's quickly update our UV boolean seams HDA. So I also want to include this UV layout. So just put down your HDA and put down a UV layout inside at the end of it, just like in here. And then just let's create a folder. Let's call it UV layout, like that, and let's just drag it inside, like that. Let's apply it. Let's go back. Now we have also UV layout in our HDA, and now instead of putting all of these nodes every time, we can just put down one HDA, and we have all the controls and speed up our workflow. So apply, accept, save node type, and match content definition. Before we actually bake out our rounded edge shader, I want to go through the process that in order what we want to do before baking it out. So let's say we have this, basically we have a quad mesh, basically from the quads or triangles, we have not yet triangulated. Basically we have done with our modeling, and how can we prepare our model for baking out the rounded edge shader. Well, first of all, before we actually create our groups, we want to put down our clean and divide nodes. So let's put down divide, and for me it's HDA divide and clean, which is just a divide and clean node on top of the selection I showed previously. So why do you want to do before it? Well, because let me show it. So I'm gonna put down back group on top of it. So you can see now our group's working very nicely. And now for our divide, so the groups are still going to be here, but sometimes when you, let's say in clean node, let's say I want to fuse very points that are very close to each other, which is basically the coincidulate points. And you can see it's going to start to delete some of these points. So you see it's kind of breaks the group. So you see that these points are very close together, and basically with this clean option, it's going to fuse them together. So that's why sometimes we want to make it cleaner. So when to clean up, and that's why we want to create the groups after we have cleaned up our geometry. And now that we have triangulated our mesh, now we can actually use our HDA with the autoseams, UV flatten, and UV layout node. So in here, make sure you have, instead of AB seams, we want to reference our seams that we have in here. So that's going to be UV seams. So what I'm going to do is go here and include edges, UV seams like that. Go inside here and start playing around with these values. This looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave it at that. And remember, we have also the UV layout node. Basically, that's going to pack our UVs the best it can. Once you have created options that are pretty good for the most of the occasions, what you can do is actually create the preset. So in here, just say preset and name it, and then use the preset too. For me, it's basically preference directory in here, and that's it. It's basically every time you're gonna put down this node, HDA, you can go and select hard edges. You don't automatically select all the options that you had selected. So now we have UV'd, we have triangulated, UV'd, now we actually can bake it out. So for that we have to actually explode the mesh beforehand. So that happens pretty easily. There's actually node for it. Let's put down explode node. This is called explode U, and you see it's basically going to ask for the piece attribute. By default, it's going to ask for the name attribute, but since for us there isn't any name attribute, so what we're going to do is actually put down a connectivity HDA, the node, and it's going to create attribute class. So let's copy it and paste inside piece attribute class. Connect it in here, in piece, and then you can see it starts to explode. Everything that is connected as a one piece, as a geometry, starts to basically explode it on its own view, like that. So this is exactly what I want. So for where it is, doesn't really matter. Looks fine. And obviously you can create an HDA for it. And now all we have to do is put down a quick material. So this is going to be our high resolution. So put down rounded edge shader. For the tint, maybe something darker, doesn't really matter, like that. And then put down a lab simple baker. So this is going to be our mantra rendering baking. So that's why since we're using rounded edge shader, which is basically rendered in mantra, that's why we have to use this simple baker. So connect it to the high, quick material, and the low is going to be from our exploded view, like that. And basically that's it for our setup. We're ready to bake out. Before baking, make sure that around the shader looks nice for it, like that. So this looks pretty good, so we're ready to bake out. So in here, just make sure everything is set up, and let's bake it out. Now that we have baked out, you see we're getting pretty nice results with the edges. Now all we have to do is put this object together back. So that we're going to use our exploded view. Let's disable our exploded view. So this is one part. Now all we really need to do is duplicate this part. So what I'm going to do is actually put down a split node. In split node, let's select the group that we want to split off. Let's select this one. And this, let's put down a copy and transform. Like that. So we're copying now this, and let's put down a null, since we don't want to do anything with the second part. And then select these two and merge them together. And let's copy it to the right amount, like that. And now to see our rounded edge shader, put down a quick game dev material. Let's make a tint something like this and select our normal map. So go into the your job, basically where our project is, and we should last modified. around the shader, you can see it's getting these black borders. That's because you have the flip Y, so there's no exception, just flip Y, you see. We're now using basically the same place in this, saved a bit of a UV space, and baked out very nice looking rounded edge shader. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you learned something, and see you next time.